Bibliophiles of the Internet. My name is Adriana, and today I'm here to do a book review for Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. You might have heard this title being thrown around in the realm of LGBT plus fiction, and that's because the main character, Simon, is gay. This is a YA contemporary novel. It's about a main character named Simon who has this anonymous sort of pen pal who he corresponds with via email, and he knows this person only as Blue. Blue is another boy who goes to the same school as Simon, but like I said, they are anonymous in their emails, so they don't know each other's identities, and they sort of bond together over the fact that they're both gay and they feel very alone in their school. And the more they talk over email, the more they start forming a real bond and start developing feelings for one another. So this cyber relationship seems like a really great thing going on for Simon until one day he's checking his email in the library and he forgets to log out of his account. So the next person who uses the computer after him, whose name is Martin, sees that Simon is still logged into his email account and decides to go through his emails and finds out all about this Blue person and that Simon's gay. So naturally, Martin decides to use this information against Simon and sort of blackmail him into becoming his wingman and helping him secure a date with a girl that he likes. So I don't know about you, but to me that synopsis seems pretty heavy and dark, and it seems like it's going to go in a really negative direction. And for that reason, I have to admit I was extremely wary going into this book. Let me just preface my thoughts by saying that as I started this book, I was 90% sure I was going to hate it or strongly dislike it. And that's because it seems like the main focus of the story is Simon coming out. That's really the main conflict of this story. Simon is deciding whether he's ready to be open with his friends and family and beat Martin to the punch, or whether he's going to let this person lord his sexual orientation over him like a bargaining chip. And as someone who is part of both the queer community and the reading community, I am really burnt out on the coming out narrative that I see perpetuated over and over and over again, not just in literature, but in all forms of media that we consume. And I was pretty sure that this book was going to be another bland iteration of the coming out narrative. We can agree or disagree about the coming out narrative all day long. I personally think that yes, it is an important narrative to tell because it gives people hope, it gives people validation and visibility. It's about acceptance of self, and the coming out narrative will always change or save lives. But at the same time, I think there are just so many other things that we need to let queer characters do besides coming out of the closet. If coming out is the best storyline that we can give to queer characters, then we're just not doing enough, because there's so much more to queer characters besides their sexuality or their identity. And right now it just feels like a grand majority of the stories that are about queer characters, especially those in YA, are just focused only on coming out or coming to terms with oneself. And the fact of the matter is that if we keep focusing only on coming out and sexual or gender identity, then we're not going to allow queer characters to have the same amount of depth as their straight counterparts. So that was my incredibly abbreviated rant on the coming out narrative. I thought it was worth mentioning because those were my preconceptions going into this book, and I was sure I was not going to enjoy it because it just seemed like another coming out story. However, the genius of Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda is that it's a story about coming out, but at the same time, it's a commentary on the convention of coming out. You know when you're horribly late for something and you're frantically running around the house trying to find your keys because you cannot find them for the life of you, and then you realize the entire time that you've been holding them in your hands? It's kind of like that. It's like the last place you would expect to look for a social commentary on coming out is a story about coming out. But Becky Albertalli does a really great job of deconstructing the convention of coming out, and she uses this storyline about a queer character being wrongfully blackmailed with their sexual orientation to examine some of the real issues that queer teenagers face. And the crazy thing is, while this is a social commentary and while it is about a queer character going through a really difficult, unjust, unfair time in his life, at the same time the story manages to be very lighthearted and fun. It's hilarious, it's entertaining, there's romance, there's so much more going on beyond Simon being blackmailed. There are two very different storylines being juxtaposed against one another in this novel, and I think that's where that incredible texture comes from, because on one hand Simon is being blackmailed by Martin and he's incredibly resentful about that. He's angry, he's stressed out, he has no idea what he's going to do about it. But on the other hand, he's falling more and more in love with Blue all the while as they continue their correspondence via email, and so that relationship is developing. So one story is heartwarming and the other one is heart-wrenching, and so that creates a really nice balance of emotions. It's a story that's hard-hitting, honest, and genuine about the queer experience, but at the same time it's also about a blooming romance and finding out who you are and learning how to be with another person and be unafraid. So I think ultimately it's an extremely queer positive story, and that's something that I didn't expect, especially with that synopsis. Another thing I really wanted to mention is that this book has to be the best and most genuine portrayal of the high school experience that I've ever read. I think a huge cliche that we often come across in YA fiction is this idea that there are two types of high school students. One is beautiful and popular, they rule the school, high school is a wonderful place for them and they never want to leave. And the other one is like the misfit, the jaded student, the geeks, the ones who don't fit in, they hate high school, it's a terrible place, they just want to leave because everyone sucks. But Simon, on the other hand, falls somewhere in the middle, and that to me is the most realistic. I really felt like the high school experience that Becky Albertalli was describing in this novel was really authentic and very close to my own, so I thought it was very relatable and real. Speaking of real, I have to talk about Simon and Blue's relationship. I thought it was amazing. Their back and forth emails were so great to read. Arguably, they were the best part of the book. I loved their chemistry. I thought what they had was very easy, and I really believed their relationship because I really did believe that the anonymity of the emails would allow them to be open and to be honest and to be bold. Something incredibly important about this book is the fact that Becky Albertalli does not strip her queer characters of their sexual presence, their sexual desires, and their sexuality, period. This is another huge, awful cliche that we see a lot, especially in YA fiction that has queer characters. Often those characters are stripped entirely of their sexuality, or they are not recognized at all as sexual beings. One of the best things about Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda is that Blue and Simon's relationship is so realistic. They do talk about sex. They talk about their sexual fantasies. They talk about fantasizing about sex with one another. They talk about their sexual experiences or lack thereof, things they want to do. They talk about wanting each other, and that is real. And I'm just gonna throw it out there. There is a masturbation scene in Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, and that was an incredible moment because you just get to see a queer teenager being a queer teenager, and that in and of itself is such a rare thing in YA fiction. I know a lot of people think that's taboo. I don't, and I think that was a huge step in the right direction for queer fiction. And I think that Becky Albertalli was really able to keep this story from going to very deeply problematic places simply because this story is told through Simon's first-person point of view. As the story progresses, you get the opportunity to become very close to Simon's consciousness, and you find it very easy to be able to empathize with him on a very personal level. And in fact, as the story goes on, you grow more indignant on Simon's part because you get to feel his emotions on a visceral level. You feel his anger, his frustration, you feel his hurt and his betrayal, and you get to feel how unjust and how unfair these circumstances are that he's been put in. And that's really the point that Becky Albertalli is trying to get across in this novel. She's trying to get the reader to empathize with a character who is being oppressed and trying to get them to see through his point of view, to see the issues that he's facing and the injustices that he has to deal with just because of who he loves. And I think she does a really great job of getting all of that across without being heavy-handed, and that's great. I think I've talked enough about this book by now. I loved it. It very pleasantly surprised me. I think it's a fantastic story and one that is worthwhile, and of course I would highly recommend it. In the end, I gave Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda 4 out of 5 stars. In the comments down below, please let me know if you have also read Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda, and if you have, please let me know your thoughts on the story. That's really everything I had for this book review today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page.